Sometimes therapy sessions take an unexpected turn. Today's session with Bob took several. Bob came back to therapy to explain something important that happened during a camping trip. According to Bob, he and Mara recently went camping in the mountains. The trip was supposed to be relaxing. Unfortunately, Bob believes a group of ninjas may have been spying on them from the tree line. Now, when a patient mentions ninjas during a camping story, you ask clarifying questions. So I asked Bob who he was camping with. Bob said he was camping with Mara. Then he paused and corrected himself. He said technically it might have been La Llorona. So I asked Bob to clarify something important. Was he camping with Mara or with La Llorona of the Rockies? Bob explained that they are sometimes the same person, but the haunting version tends to appear more often when they are in the mountains. Apparently, that's part of her territory. At this point, Bob explained that the ninjas started watching them while he was outside the camper. He told me he was simply trying to warm up the camper. Now, as a therapist, when a patient says they were warming up the camper, you assume they mean starting the engine or adjusting the heater. So I asked Bob what he meant by that. Bob then very calmly explained exactly what he meant. At that point, I realized Bob was not talking about the heater. I paused, closed my notebook for a moment, and reminded myself that therapists are trained to maintain a professional expression. Eventually, I opened the notebook again and continued the session. Because sometimes the most important part of therapy is documenting what you just heard and deciding whether the ninjas are the most concerning part of the story. Bob had a dream, not a complicated dream, a simple dream. Bob wanted to marry Mara. He leaned across the table. Mara, I've been thinking. Mara sighed. That's usually dangerous. Bob nodded. I want to marry you. Mara looked up. You do? Bob smiled proudly. Yes. I want to be husband number. Bob paused. 7? Mara raised an eyebrow. 7? Bob looked uncertain. Or 8? Mara crossed her arms. Bob, you're forgetting a few. Bob began counting on his fingers. There was the pilot. Yes. The personal trainer. Yes. The motivational speaker. Yes. The guy with the food truck. Yes. Bob paused. Then the accountant. Mara nodded. Correct. Bob frowned. So that's 5. Mara stared at him. Bob counted again. 1, 2, 3. He stopped. This is harder than I thought. Mara leaned forward. Bob, why do you want to marry me? Bob smiled proudly. Because when the police eventually catch us, it will look better if we're married. Mara nodded slowly. That's actually the smartest thing you've ever said. Bob brightened. Really? Mara shrugged. Yes. Bob leaned back proudly. Then it's settled. Mara asked, so what's the plan? Bob smiled. We commit just enough crime to afford the wedding. Mara nodded. That makes sense. Bob paused. So, husband number... He counted again. 6? Mara shook her head. Bob. Yes? You're not even close. Bob sighed. Well, at least I'm trying. And somewhere nearby, Biscuit barked, because even the dog knew. Bob wasn't trying to become a criminal mastermind. Bob was just trying to become Mara's next husband.
Most people think a signal is just noise, but noise becomes a signal when you notice the pattern. One clue doesn't mean anything. 2 clues could be coincidence. But if you put enough patterns together, the signal starts to make sense. And that's when the riddle solves itself. Signals from the brain.
Mara rolled over in the middle of the night. Bob. Bob didn't move. Bob, what is that? Bob smiled in the dark. You found my chicken nuggets. Mara froze. Your what? Bob nodded proudly. My chicken nuggets. Mara stared at him. Bob, he shrugged. What? You my little chicken nuggets now. Mara stared at the map on the table. Bob, I think there's another time machine. Bob blinked. Another one? Mara nodded. Think about it. How is he getting all that water? His house is too secure. Bob leaned back. You're saying there's another time machine somewhere. Mara smiled. Bob sighed. So we're breaking in again. Bob burst into the room. Mara, I solved crime. Mara slowly looked up. That sentence worries me. Bob smiled. If we steal something, and then go back in time before we stole it. Mara stared. Bob. Bob nodded proudly. Technically, the crime never happened. Bob. Mara, I figured out how we get rich. Mara. That sentence has never ended well. Bob, holding blueprint. We steal the time machine. Mara. Bob. Bob. Think about it. If we control time, a portal opens behind them. Eli Rowan steps out. Eli, you're planning to steal my time machine? Bob pauses. Bob, so that's a maybe? Mara. Bob. Bob. New plan. Mara. What? Bob. We steal the ring. Eli stares. Bob ran into the room. Mara, we're about to be rich. Mara sighed. This better not involve the time machine. Bob grinned. We go back in time and buy winning lottery tickets. Mara stared. How would you know the winning numbers? Bob blinked. Internet. Bob stared at the lion cub. Mara, I have an idea. Mara sighed. That sentence has never helped us. Bob pointed at the cub. We adopt him. Mara blinked. Bob, that's a lion. Bob nodded. A baby lion. Mara crossed her arms. Bob, people adopt children. Bob shrugged. Same concept. Mara stared at him. It is not the same concept. Bob looked proud. Mara, if people can adopt kids, we can adopt a lion. Mara rubbed her temples. Bob, a lion is not a baby. Bob thought for a moment. It's a bigger baby. Just then, the lion cub roared. Mara grabbed Bob's arm. Bob, where's its mother? Bob froze. New plan. Mara whispered. Bob, why are we outside the zoo? Bob smiled. Step 1 of the plan. Mara blinked. What plan? Bob pointed through the fence. The lion cub. Mara stared. Bob, that's a lion. Bob nodded. A baby lion. Mara grabbed his arm. Bob, its mother will eat us. Bob shrugged. Mara, think positive. Mara sighed. This is the worst idea you've ever had. Bob smiled proudly. Mara, my little chicken nuggets. You the smartest?